And then Newman?
Yeah, I'm also a bit tired. I don't know if it's new moon energy. It's just like everything kind of rolling in. But I'm very excited about the intentional study and like doing work, in the meeting. Like we're going to be building this database and talking about the stuff. It's like we're studying together, now. So that's exciting to me.
Very cool. I'm also a little bit tired today. I bet it's been a little bit of a down week for me. And yeah, my energy is slowly recovering, so the rest of the week will be good. But I'm also excited to jump in and see how it goes. All right. So, really quick. So last time we talked about doing some pattern exploration. So today is May 7th, 2024. And we have reasoned decision making and participation on deck today from Roberto and Newman. Are you guys ready to do that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
For sure. For sure.
Okay. So I just did a quick agenda. Here's a link to where Jeremy's keeping the cards. We did their check-in. Is there anything else we want to talk about today, or do we want to jump right in?
Did we want to talk about Fund 12 proposals and stuff, or should we wait until Thursday, realizing that we're
That
getting
gives us
close? Yeah,
Thursday gives us like a couple days, right?
to
Um,
write anything. Yeah.
maybe what do people think? Do you want to start with Fund 12 or end with Fund 12?
What do you all think? I could go either way. Maybe maybe start with Fund 12 because I kind of feel, yeah, I think we can get that out of the way, then that'll.
Is everyone okay with that? All right. Any objections? All right.
And and that would be the Fund 12 stuff is in that those Word documents.
Yeah. Okay. Any other agenda items that might be important today? All right. Any announcements? All right. If not, do you want to take us into the Fund 12 conversation?
Yeah, I could. Um, so I kind of took a little bit of this as a focus for this week, and we kind of were like, oh, what if we just, put down some ideas in this document? Like we kind of like didn't really want to put it in Discord. We felt like a doc might be worthwhile. So here's that document. And and Nora, you had asked about possibly resubmitting the the S3 PBL proposal, which I guess really was the big driver for ODIN, you know, in that time frame. I don't know, January, right around the Fund 11. I can't even remember when, and that sort of spawned the game, and now we're working on the patterns. Um, what I wrote was that they would limit my concern about resubmitting is like it would limit us to the PBL, pulling our resources, time and attention, etc., from other experiments. And then it didn't get funded last time, so we would probably, I'm just reading this here. Um, and then and then as I thought more about it, I was like, okay, what if we scaled it back? And then thinking about what we're currently doing and really being kind of excited about the idea of going through all of the patterns. And then I was just like, yeah, let's see if we can just get the study group and this activity funded, and came up with this proposal, the Fund 12 possible proposal, which is linked up there. And basically what this is, the context is, fund what we are doing already. So really the study group is like a weekly meeting, investigating, experimenting with the game to teach and learn S3 methods. And then now experimenting with short community member presentations of the S3 patterns, basically here's the things that we're doing. And what I thought was like, hey, let's ask for funding to do these S3 pattern S3 pattern presentations, and title ideas like governance patterns, open study group with funded participation. Because the idea would be that there is just a treasury for anyone to come and do a short presentation and get a small amount of ADA, not a salary amount or a thing, but just a small incentive to do it. And I did some pencil testing of like, okay, if there's 79 patterns and you get 10 minutes of presenting and questions, that's 13 hours and 10 meetings and blah blah blah. And I did all that sort of stuff. And just thought about it and just put in a little bit of time to sort of see if that resonated with folks, to possibly put it in. I'm on the fence about what could be possibly like, would this be a thing? And I talked to Harsha about it, and I talked to Simon about it, and we took notes on that other document. We go back there, we kind of see. Yeah, that's just the old last Fund 11 proposal. But if you go back to that other document, you can see like the notes that Harsha and I took. And basically Harsha and I were like, okay, what is, why fund us? What's the value proposition? And our idea is that like any community relies on these collaboration habits and a culture, and then the culture can be updated and shifted into this, using these S3 as a way to investigate the culture and sort of start making a change to a more effective culture. And then actually this was a really good one with we're like, is like, what makes a Cardano community? And we're like, is ODIN a Cardano community? And then should it be funded by Project Catalyst funds? And I was like, well, I guess we're focused on Cardano, but we're not really using it. And I was like, well, what if we used Andamio, or what if we used another Cardano tool like Clarity DAO? There was a bit of attention on like the effort it takes to write a proposal, the difference between building a proposal in the ODIN way, the S3 way, and the Project Catalyst format. We talked a little bit about the game stuff, but anyway, when I talked to Simon about it, he was just like, it might be a good way to reach out to other communities and ask them basically to validate the idea beforehand, because if the value of that, like a budget for these presentations of the S3 patterns would be to expand our network and start talking to other groups. Like if we, the Dubai Blockchain Center um, is something that Simon has a contact in, and he was just like, yeah, if we could get them, and if they were like, yeah, we've got members that would do a presentation, and if we could get a couple of different, like some of the town halls, if we could get some commitment or agreement or partnership from those other communities, it might make, for a better proposal, for a tighter case for the value, you know. Yeah. And so
it occurred to me that the primary driver for doing any effort for Catalyst Fund 12 proposals is to create is to add sustainability for us. And like going to get more contributors to share a very small amount of cash and spread it farther around to people who haven't already done the background work that we've done feels like a kind of a wrong direction for me. Why not concentrate the impact financially on us who have already been doing all this effort, and maybe frame the budget up to pay us some for what we have done and some for what we are doing, and focus it in on this learning material about S3 that like Jeremy's pointing to with these cards.
yeah.
And then the other comment I had is there a reason we don't want to propose the S3 PBL? I think the intended impact of that one was to create a system that would give us a greater capacity of S3 knowledgeable people.
Yeah, that's a fair question. I just didn't resonate with it. I was just like, when I thought about redoing it, I was like, just for those that it would need some revamping to sort of see why people weren't into it. That I feel like it might be too big. It's like too big of a bite that people will fund community effort and the lower end, but not for like a full blown S3, PBL. I was just thinking more like smaller. That's sort of my thought. But what does anybody else?
I kind of agree with that, or at least maybe doing the proposals outlined here gives us the building blocks to do a PBL later in Fund 13 or 14. It'll give us a chance to experiment, see what works, and then as we start to build things out to see what learning these things looks like, we can craft a PBL. These are core concepts. These are a good order to learn them in. We've experimented with these. And it's like, this might be preparatory work to a PBL. But yeah, I agree. Not doing a PBL and doing the preparatory work feels better at this point.
I wonder if we're taking too much signal from it didn't get funded last round. What I have been observing in Catalyst is that what gets voted for is what the whales have self-interest in. And just because they didn't have self-interest in that before doesn't mean it's a bad proposal. If we look at it and we think it's a bad proposal, okay, that's something else.
Yeah, and I think that the whale focus might be on 1694 and the sort of governance. Like if we kind of lead that forward, it's just like, look, we're going to be asked to do like this big governance action, like the whole community. And wouldn't it be great as some place that they can go and say, hey, here's how you can learn to collaborate and be effective. Here's a framework that's already in place and, can align our government's collaborative action. That might be a way to sort of get some whale attention.
And just paying attention to the time. Does this feel like this particular proposal has enough energy that we want to continue crafting it? Maybe async, or even get together this week at some point later, or do it at the community meeting?
Yeah, I'll be happy to work on it a little bit and work on it at the community meeting. And then really, thinking about what Randall said is just like, yeah, maybe we look at the full blown PBL course and just float it up and see what it's like. I guess it's not too big of a problem, but yeah, we can talk about it. And then before we go, there is one more where I put down some other ideas about what other proposals were, and if we can just show that's in the spreadsheet. That's where did I link it?
One.
Yeah, there you go. So the first one, the S3 pattern presentations, like a game idea, general ODIN community funding, the collaborative Sparks proposal, like if we could propose something in collaborative Sparks for Project Catalyst, Randall's governance tool initiative, and then Jeremy's field mapping initiative. And
cool.
Yeah, so those are the ones that I was just like, okay, this is what we are doing. So it's just like, can we just get some funding for the stuff that we're doing? That's my.
Cool. And thanks for putting in there, because this is actually also what we're doing. So it's that one thing you can bookmark to see all the things you can collaborate into.
Yeah.
I really like that, to have kind of that index or map of content into our stuff. So it would be great to get Google Doc links into here and Discord thread links.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that might be a way to kind of and then to think of it in terms of that wiki, and this is like an index page, and it becomes that kind of backlog or visualized work. That's the pattern. So it's like, yeah, we can look and see that it's here.
Cool. Welcome, Harsha.
Hey.
You want to do a really brief check-in as a transition before we go to the main course?
Yeah, I'm doing good, and I'm just looking forward to what proposals we come up with, and then this is the perfect page that opened up as soon as it came, so everything worked out. Yeah.
Cool. And then just a heads up, May 8th is the due date, but here, after that, we'll have to figure out, are we going to summarize or continue? But deadlines are coming up for Fund 12, so maybe community meeting is the deadline for feedback, and then we do some concrete thing there to summarize.
Okay.
Okay. Going back to this, study topics. Who wants to go first?
I can go first.
All
Cool.
right. Stop my share.
All right.
Ooh, a slide deck.
I know.
He's setting the bar
Always.
really high.
I know. I was like,
Okay. So my topic was reasoned decision making, which is part of the sense making and decision making patterns. And I found this thing. I looked up like a definition of reasoned decision making apart from from sociocracy, and it came up like a part of critical thinking, and I like this one because it's basically I remember when in law school I did like a logic course, like I don't know what was it called. It was applied to law or whatever, but it is basically logic is just kind of working within the rules of language to come up with conclusions, and it just language has rules, And reasoned decision making or objective decision making is basically thinking within those constraints to come up with logical decisions. So you had your whatever your what is the word? I don't know. I know it's Spanish, but anyways, so it's basically if you want to come up with some sort of reasoned decision making, you just follow a process, and that's what sociocracy S3 gives us to make reasoned decision making. And another thing that's going to come up later, and it's also interesting, is just that this is a process that maps to other patterns within sociocracy, and I'm sure you already kind of know which ones they are. But anyways, so I thought these three words would kind of encompass the start and the end of the project, the process, right? In order to have a productive conversation, you want to explore different perspectives and what knowledge participants have about the topic. And the sort of the process enriches the thought, the initial argument, to the point that you can kind of get to an agreement on if it's viable or if it's relevant or if it's valid or just in the book says empirically true, I guess, for the group, I guess. And so it's this process, right? We've seen it a bunch of times, and it's funny how we'll see at the end there's a little table and how each of these just means a different thing in different patterns. Like present, I think it's in consent decision making is just proposal, right? You present the proposal. So in this reasoned decision making is just you present the subject for investigation, which can be an argument or a proposal on how you want to proceed. Then you want to understand the subject. So this involves clarifying questions, right? You need to check with everyone that whatever you're saying, people understand, so they can, I guess, add to the conversation or, yeah. And then step number 3, it's just this treats you like a little child, but you want to use hand signs to check if anyone disagrees with the subject. And I guess this is kind of makes sense so that you can keep sort of the conversation in order. But you basically, I remember I saw a video with sociocracy and they raised a fist or an open hand or something if they had any agreements or disagreements. And these are to question the viability or the validity of the argument that's being proposed. So if there's any objections or anyone disagrees, you want to hear out their argument or disagreement, and you get into this like recursive cycle where so does everyone understand the disagreement or the argument, and you check for validity, blah 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 again until you come up with the circle kind of comes back to the main argument with the integrated information. So all those disagreements and all that conversation around the disagreements and what can be what were the concerns or disagreements with the original argument are ideally integrated into the original idea so that you can come up with that viable argument, that valid argument, that common truth from that group, from the understanding of the group of the argument, the proposal, and what everyone knows about the proposal.
Hey, Roberto.
Sorry.
Quick question.
Yeah.
On that prior diagram, I recognize, we're presenting the proposal. Does everybody understand what the proposal is? Do we have any objections? And then present the objection. Does anybody understand the objection? Let's check if it qualifies as an objection. So far, so good?
It's fractal. Like within that process, you do this again. Like for objections, you present, understand, check.
And the question for you, Roberto, is have you seen this pattern in additional places beyond those 2 cases?
How do you mean those 2 cases? Consent decision making and reasoned decision making?
Proposal,
Objection,
consent versus the second case being objection.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I mean. At the end, there's a little table, and there's one more, I think. It's consent decision making, objections, testing validity of arguments also includes this process. It's just yeah.
And this is the generalized pattern.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like the abstraction, and you apply it to then the different patterns. So I found it interesting because even in the consent decision making process, it just seems nested, right? You need to go. It just goes one step down. If you reach a point where you disagree, you go into this parallel process, right? You immediately go into this other, but the dispute is absolutely nothing more than this process all over again, right? It's no different. You just start a parallel process and then if this has another dispute, then you go back and you do it again. So it cascades down until you can sort of bubble it back up to the integration, right? You resolve all disputes, all concerns, or all our objections, and those are resolved through amendments. And again, last table is probably the coolest because it kind of shows how all this stuff, it just has different names and different patterns, but it's basically the same thing. It's just applying reasoned decision making across different S3 patterns to come up with. I guess this is just coming up. It's just a methodology to come up with a common source of truth that is, I guess, and this is the other part that I found interesting. This is kind of just like an afterthought in the book, but this is contextually, culturally, amount of people involved, and the way that it's dependent on a lot of things. So it's not necessarily objective. Well, there is no objective truth, like whatever we're not like dogmas or whatever, but it's going to depend these arguments, these things, and that's kind of where I think it's an iterative process. It's a good enough for now because it's going to depend on a variety of factors. Culturally, the truths are going to be different. Objective realities are going to be different depending on who you're talking to. I know I've found that a lot. Contextually, what is the context of the conversation? What is the context of the decision that needs to be made? That's going to depend, that will change the process and will change the outcome probably. Amount of people involved, well, that's kind of an easy one, right? The more people, the harder it's going to be to come up with that agreement. Yes.
Yeah, this is interesting because this gets us into something we found in the game where like our context, and I think Jeremy really brought this home, is just like, well, when we're context heavy and we know exactly what's going on, and the situation is very clear, it's easy to run through this process quickly. Present, hey, I think we should fight the monster, understand, everybody understand, okay, well, I'm going to hit him with the bomb, Harsha's going to hit him with the crucifix. Check, everybody's okay with this? Oh, Harsh is about to die. Okay, then we do a little, you know what I'm saying? Like it's very quick and it sort of changes, would be totally different, but it would still follow the same general pattern if there were more of us, or if we were in a asynchronous face-to-face, or the culture was different. We were in a different scenario, or not in a game, or the stakes were different. So I think that's what this slide is describing. Is that sort of right?
Yeah,
Stakes.
kind of. Sorry, Randall, you go.
I was just saying yes to stakes, and how much trust is there?
Yeah. That's a culture, right? Yeah.
And how much value is attributed to trust? I was kind of going to, when you studied leadership, like in an MBA setting or whatever, and you kind of have to go like, oh, because now we're globalized, right? And you need to understand different cultures, understand things differently. Latin culture, it might sound like, I don't know, stereotypical, but it does apply, right? Latinos and Latin American culture it's very contextual. It's very who you know, it's very familiar. And there are other cultures where it's very maybe fact-based and very, so, and I lived in Australia. I lived here in the US. Here in the US, it's weird because I've been sort of like in my little cave and I barely go out. But in Australia, it's super interesting because they're just really quick-witted. You need to make everyone laugh. That's how you get people to like you. They're incredibly, like really fast on their feet to just throw a little jab or whatever. And then Guatemala or whatever, you basically, if you don't know anyone, you are no one. Like people don't trust each other. There's a lot of corruption and a lot of scams or whatever. So everyone, like who you hire is just who you know. So that influences all these things, right? Trust, or how much people just logic or whatever. Anyways, I thought this was really cool to kind of keep in mind that this process is modified by who you're with, what their background is, what is the context, et cetera, et cetera. That was a little interesting thing. And so the next is how it maps, right? It's just a supporting process for a lot of different patterns. And this is what I was talking about, which is you map reasoned decision making to consent, to test arguments qualify as objections, and to resolve objections. How does it look like? In consent decision making, it's a proposal. When you're testing if it qualifies as an objection, is an argument. And when you're resolving an objection, it's a proposal for an amendment, right? It's the same thing, same process, just it's a different thing. All of them are checking for understanding, just different words, right? It just uses different words. It's the same process, which makes sense because we just saw that you need to go through the thing again, right? And when you have a dispute, what are you doing? You're checking if the objection qualifies, et cetera, et cetera. Yes, Nori.
I love this. There's a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And he talks about system 1 and system 2 thinking. And system 1 is kind of this intuitive, fast kind of, you make like decisions really fast based on your gut instinct. And system 2 thinking engages the rational brain, kind of goes slower, but you kind of do this reasoned kind of decision making based on that. And this is a way to really give that structure. I love that it enables us to harness that system 2 thinking, according to Kahneman, and make better decisions, because we start with our gut, but we should use this to verify that it's actually valid. And I like how this maps to all the patterns. It gives a kind of meta context to why it's structured the way it is.
Can you show that again?
The book?
Yeah. Thank you.
By the way,
a Nobel Prize. But yeah, go ahead.
No, just something really interesting about Daniel Kahneman is he came up with the concept of adversarial collaboration. He says that people never change their mind. You can just reach an agreement sort of to disagree or something. And so he comes up with this process, whereas academics, he realized this because he noticed that as much as he knew, he and his wife are both academics and they had to present on a topic, and they kept challenging each other. And the only thing that the wife said is like, yeah, you just proved that I didn't know something, but that doesn't mean I'm wrong. And it was that way. And so he comes up with this process where people that, like scientists, I guess, academics, that come with different points of view and something, how do you reach a common sort of truth? And this is kind of that, right? You can disagree, but at the end you'll find that good enough for now, safe to try thing, where you're not really convinced about the other person's point of view necessarily, but you can get to the point where you say, yeah, what is the harm in this? This is perfectly safe to try. Let's gather some more data. But in essence, his main argument is like, you don't change your mind. You never change your mind. Once you have beliefs set in, you kind of just tune it a little bit, but it doesn't really change. And I thought that was really interesting, because I was looking into the concept of adversarial collaboration for like andamio, right? People with different points of view, and you need to trust each other and work together collaboratively while holding probably very different opinions.
I think that's the true magic of S3 is it's not finding out who's right or wrong or changing people's opinions. It's finding that space of overlap where there's tolerance for that solution on all parties' parts. And I guess the conjecture is it always exists as long as you modify the proposal enough. It could be by limiting, we're going to experiment for a week and see how it goes. And that may swing a lot of people to yes, okay, that's safe enough for now, or other things. So I really love the process, that it's not about right or wrong. It's about getting within that tolerance range, which opens up the solution space so much larger.
As an example of one of the items on this grid, I'll say, Nori, when you said that, did you mean like the intersection on a Venn diagram, or were you more pointing to like, hey, that's this person's area of responsibility and I'm overlapping enough to advise them? And I think there's something in the check row about that. Like, what did you mean? Or maybe it's understand.
Understand. Yeah. I think that clarity is super powerful too. Time check. We're 15 minutes out.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
That was
Thanks,
awesome.
guys.
Do we want to switch to
My
the other
big
program?
takeaway on this one is it's like a commitment. I don't know if this is the Spanish word you were thinking of, but it's like there's a commitment to being, together in the process rather than in favor over allowing just argument to happen.
Yeah, yeah, and that actually really does segue pretty nicely into artful participation, which is the one that I wanted to talk about today. We all cool with changing over to artful participation?
Let's do artful participation.
Yeah. So what was interesting to me is that this pattern is in the enablers of co-creation subset of the big map. You can see it here. So these are all of the different enablers of co-creation. And it's sort of, I don't know, it was interesting. Here's the short definition. Commit to doing your best to act and interact in ways that enable effective collaboration. The first thing that I did was look up the term, the definition. It means clever and skillful, especially in getting what you want. So as I read down the page, there were a couple of things that sort of stood out. Immediately, I thought about this idea of agreements. That participation is an agreement. We make an agreement to participate, and in sort of a collaborative process, like in a decision-making process. And if we agree to artfully participate, that means skilling up, like growing necessary skills, supporting others. And one thing that stood out to me was, well, one that this artful participation can participating artfully can include like breaking agreements and like surfacing tensions, that when you kind of understand that it's okay, that it's also an action, a way of participating to sort of break an agreement and say, oh, and I think that adds to like a vibrant and good community. People that are co-creating together have to have the ability to break their agreements. So it's like getting into agreements and getting out of agreements. This one, and then that sort of like the idea of the agreement and listing out your agreements, like what it is that you do, and then how and how you participate in a community, and then how you can more skillfully, more artfully, which is basically skill and getting to where you want to go, and that can mean your goal or the group goal. Is interesting, and I want to get to this graphic, which really did sort of stand out to me. I did a search for artful participation over at the Sociocracy community, and they did about a year ago. They had a meetup that was all about artful participation. Unfortunately, they didn't record it, but there were a couple of posts about it. James Priest wrote this one about like the ego. If you're self-conscious about your inadequacies, you should work on removing the inadequacies, not about the self-consciousness. Meaning that, like feeling those tensions and the introspection and the awareness is actually a really good thing to sort of, which brings us back to this idea of, understanding where your interactions are helpful or ineffective, like looking inside and seeing which agreements or how, where is it hard to participate, and then they've got this idea of developing skills in order to participate more fully, participate in a more effective way, that type of thing. Yeah, this is not supported by any of the text. So there's nothing that says collaboration, and I have no idea where it came from, but it was interesting. And I first, and Nori and maybe was Randall, there's some other folks that we looked at this earlier in the Gimbal Labs meeting, and we're like, yeah, this is just unsettling. Does autonomy and collaboration, like, how do they relate? What I took it to mean is sort of the guardrails of a game. When you enter into agreements with a team and you say, hey, we're going to collaborate, that means that you're accepting a common goal and a common sort of framework for playing the game or doing your participation. Meaning that if you all decide to play soccer and you show up with your baseball glove and bat and start smashing around the ball, and you're not being skillful about participating. But you are, pulling back your autonomy. You don't have total freedom to do what you may want, but where these align. But anyway, that's my presentation. Now I can bring it up for questions. Does anyone, do you feel like what artful participation means now?
I love the first part. It almost feels like there could be an agreement that it says commitment. So do you make a formal, sign a thing that says, I will actively consider and follow up on all agreements, develop awareness, understanding of this, support others, etc. Like to say, I'm an artful participant, I commit to this. And then I love the benefits. And it made me think about the autonomy collaboration. If you can make collaboration part of your autonomous desire, then that teeter-totter doesn't matter so much.
Yeah.
It's like being highly collaborative aligns with your sense of.
But check it out. If you kind of, how the teeter-totter works, but if you were to slide closer to the fulcrum here, and the autonomy and the collaboration sort of get to, then it becomes a more stable machine. Harsha, I guess you got your hand up.
So I'm thinking of autonomy in this case not just as what I want to do, but also to be able to use common resources. And that is where I think you can't just do whatever you want because everyone else depends on it.
Yeah, that's sort of, like a commons type of, you can't just take your, you can't just take all the funds or, graze your sheep on the thing. I feel like there's something in there to that for sure. Nori and then Jeremy.
It was brought up this morning at the Gimbal Lab session. One thing that helps autonomy align more with collaboration is clarity on scope and roles. And there's a bunch of stuff in S3 around that. And the more clarity you have around your space, and the team agrees that that's your space or your role, then you have a whole bunch of autonomy within that space. Like you can't go outside of it without drafting new agreements, but within that space, you have total autonomy. And then where it overlaps with other spheres of influence, then you need to do that stuff. But I think that's a really great enabler of autonomy, is getting enough clarity on what the boundaries are of your autonomous role.
Yeah, get clarity means that the more clarity you have, the more autonomy you have inside of that space.
Yeah, rather than having to ask, is this okay all the time? You can just go do it,
Nori, I think there's a flip side to that, but I'll get in the queue.
Aha. What an artful participation. Okay, Jeremy.
There's another way of looking at that balance between autonomy and collaboration where they're a feedback loop, and each of them provides the structure for the other, and they evaluate their passage through time by how the other is changing. and that tells them what they've changed. So your autonomy changes the conditions of collaboration around you as you do things with your autonomy. And that's your collaborative structure. But for the collaborative structure, for like the group initiative, or for the principles that are being expressed, and what Harsha brought up, the commons that's being protected or sustained, that is looking at how is it being used by autonomous agents, right? So as a commons is reduced, as it's exploited, any commons, including a knowledge commons, then it needs to bring its autonomous agents into alignment with itself in a healthy way. And for it, the autonomous agents are the structure, right? Because they're the ones using the resource. So rather than this up and down balance on a fulcrum, which possibly is a good model, there's like a tension that's resolved by feedback, right? When you feel the pull from the other side, that tells you to let up a little. When it feels more pull on its side, that tells it to let up a little. It's a loop. So I thought that was a good layer to add on to that.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great sort of visualization. This their connection in a feedback loop and the tension between them, autonomy and collaboration, and this idea of structure. So we'll maybe get back to that. Randall, what's up?
So the flip side of what Nori was saying about this is how I understand my responsibility. I don't need to ask so much for permission. You could be on the other end of it. And you could be sitting on the collaboration side of the conversation. And your artful participation consists of acknowledging the autonomy of the person who's proposing and offering input in a way that's not like, well, I object because you didn't think of this. The artful way would be, have you considered this point of view?
Yeah,
oh, you did consider the point of view. That's beautiful.
I
think really honor that other person's autonomy within their scope of influence.
I kind of, the more that I've rolled around with this, I kind of am seeing it more in that way, Randall. That the artfulness is being artful in that like artistic or creative way, which is a part of cleverness. Like, yeah, you have something that you want, and you kind of know if you ask directly, and it's not, I mean, kind of might bump up to sort of like clever as in scammy, but it's like creative, and when there's trust, you can to kind of, there's a push pull, and that gets to that tension between like figuring out what you need and then figuring out how to get to that part in your participation. There is something into it, that side of the definition of it too. One of them was like how our participation affects others, which I thought was a little bit difficult. Like it says, where are my interactions unhelpful or ineffective? And I guess it's sort of that idea of sensing and being able to get the feedback or not asking permission, but getting the advice process possibly. And it's just like, yeah. And I think that's kind of the holy grail of a good team. I don't know if you watch like a professional team and they shout at each other. They're like, "Whoa, man, and they're mean and angry." But then the next play, they're like high-fiving, and it's just like, "Oh, we won," and it's the most incredible thing. Meaning that they have the ability to like express their full. That's like a real wholeness, and like open communication. Which, just sorry to take the mic for a second here. What Roberto was talking about with the potential process modifiers, that each one of us, in order to do artful participation, needs to be aware of the culture, like, what our context is, like the amount of trust, or the, like, for instance, somebody that's speaking in their second language, or they're in the middle of the night and we're just waking up, like, this has really permeated our whole Project Catalyst global sort of system, meaning that we have to take into account that the kids from Australia are it's in the middle of the morning, they are in the middle of the night there. And that those things affect artful participation. Yeah.
All right.
That was fun. Thank y'all.
That was perfect timing. Thanks, Newman. And I just realized Fireflies is recording all the video for this as well, including the presentations. So we could take out these 15-minute video clips and put them into our kind of
Yes.
catalog of things as we move through. Thanks, everybody. Why don't we jump into the checkout round? I'm just going to go around my screen, start with Jeremy and go to Randall.
That was awesome. I think this is a really great project we've serviced here. I dropped a mural board in the chat that's using a complexity explorer mindset to decode artful participation is something I built long before I heard of S3. And it's amazing to me that S3 surfaces 90% of what I put in that board that came from great complexity engineers from Santa Fe and MIT. So awesome stuff. And I just love how everything connects. I think this is going to be a great exercise.
I'll echo that. The fact that all this stuff that we read about in S3 actually makes sense outside S3. It's like you come to it and what you read draws your attention in particular ways, but it also already makes sense. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Randall. Newman, then Roberto.
It was really wonderful to have this as I just felt energized through the week, preparing and doing. Yeah, it felt right, and I'm stoked to continue on and work through the patterns. Yep.
Roberto, then Harsha.
Yeah, thanks everybody for your feedback and participating in the presentations. This was pretty fun. And thanks, Newman, for the art for participation presentation. That was super cool. This is definitely a good way to get into the patterns. I really enjoyed this session. Thanks to everybody.
Cool. And Harsha.
Yeah, I really like the sessions as well. And now I feel like, there were times previously when we were all working together where we didn't know what we could apply, which pattern to apply where. Now I think we'll have a natural way to connect things and figure out how to move forward. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks everybody. I really enjoyed the session too. I think I felt like it was kind of fulfilling the initial impetus of being a study group, and we're learning the patterns. Reminder for next week is Randall and Harsha talking about whole system for work, prioritize backlog, and role and clarify domains. Are you all good to go for that? And then the sign up board is open. As things move, you feel free to put your name up for the next stuff, but we'll probably check in next week just to make sure that we have a full set of patterns for the 21st. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Cool.
Okay,
Bye,
guys.
y'all. Thanks.
Everybody.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.